Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode. I'm very excited to welcome our guest today. I've been wanting to interview her for a very long time, and it just never felt like the right time, but now it has, and you'll see why a little bit later into the episode. But this is Sharron Basanti from Seeds of Shati on Instagram, and that's also her website. And she's a Canadian-based Indian artist and writer, and she's also the creator of the Seeds of Shati Oracle, which I happen to have it. I have it right here with me. It's gorgeous. Get it if you don't have it. She's also a tea leaf reader and a card reader. And if you happen to follow her on Instagram, you know that she creates beautiful moon rituals for every moon cycle. Also awesome card spreads, which I use, Sharron, all the time. For like every time you post one, I use it. But yeah, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yes, hi, Cherise. Thanks for having me. It's finally nice to be able to connect in real time because you and I have been connecting on Instagram since 2015, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I know, it's pretty crazy. It's awesome to actually, you connect with people online.
Yeah.
It's different when you actually get to be with them face to face. So
Yeah, definitely.
as face to face as we can be right now. So awesome. Well, do you want to go ahead? I know I kind of just introduced you a little bit, but do you want to maybe introduce yourself and kind of how you got where you are? Like how are you here?
Yeah, I think like most people, my story is kind of, I don't know, like I never thought I would be here, looking back like even 10 years ago. So I had started university back in 2001, and then I dropped out, worked, and then I decided to go back. And when I went back, I started to get more into the cards, divination, the chakras, and all the spiritual stuff. And so it was a side thing for me as I was going to school. It just kind of brought calmness to me, and I was reading cards for people I met in my classes. And one day I joined a spiritual circle, and the gal there, she's reading at a local bookstore, and a metaphysical shop / bookstore, and she recommended me. And I went in there, and I thought it was going to be a one-day kind of gig, and then I'd just go back to normal life. And it didn't turn out that way. I became one of the weekly readers, and a couple months in, the owner asked me to lead a tarot workshop, so I did that. And then as I was reading for people, I always felt like there was something missing, And then I just got so drawn to tea leaf reading, and I incorporated that into my work. And then I created an oracle deck, got on Instagram, changed my life. So that's my big long story of how I got to where I am right now.
I love it. I love how it all just kind of seemed to flow to you. Like even though you weren't necessarily consciously I'm going to become a professional tarot reader and I'm going to definitely set out and do this. It kind of just all the pieces just kind of fell perfectly for
you. Yeah, you won't even believe what I went to school for. It was for teaching high school geography and social studies and history.
That's a little bit of a different path.
Yeah, it is. And then the market was soft here in BC for teaching. I thought, I'm going to be an accountant. So I was just, in totally a different world than.
Oh, wow.
But, it set me up for what I do now in many ways, even though it's so unrelated.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of cool how that always happens. We'll look back and we're like, why in the world was I going down this path? But then we realize oh, there's so much that I can actually apply to my current path, even though they're totally different. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on that.
Awesome. So you mentioned, so how long ago was that you first kind of learned about tea leaf reading?
It was over a decade ago. And I learned from a woman who would house sit for people. She was based on an island just off the coast of BC, and she happened to be in the Vancouver area. And she said, okay, well, if you get together 2-3 people, I'll teach you. So I asked my friend, a few other people, and it was just the 4 of us with her, and we spent the day learning from her. And it was a really magical experience because I had never done tea leaves before. Mm-hmm. And, it's kind of like picking up your tarot deck for the first time and picking a card and connecting with it.
Mm-hmm. That's so awesome. That does sound like such a magical, wonderful day. Like, I want to go do that. That's awesome. And that's exciting. Like, I haven't had that. I've never done tea leaf reading before. I've obviously I've read about it. I've heard about it, but I've never personally done it. I've never had my tea leaves read.
Oh my goodness.
But now I want to, yeah, I'm going to try it. I think, but that makes me excited thinking about that feeling. Cause I remember the first time I got my tarot cards and the first time I'm like shuffling them and I'm like, this is so awesome. This is so exciting. And I haven't felt that in a while because I've used a lot of these spiritual tools for quite a while. So I'm kind of excited to have that little feeling again. So what draws you specifically to tea leaf reading? Like why is that like something that is really
that's a really good question. It's so different from the tarot. I mean, the tarot has all these layers, right? When you learn the cards, you start reading them with the colors, the symbolism, then you start learning about, the archetypes and numerology, astrology, right? But with tea leaf reading, there isn't any of those esoteric systems, right? Mm-hmm. And each cup, I know we always say with the tarot, each time you lay the cards, they're unique, right? But I feel with tea leaves, it's even more unique, right? Because when your client or whoever you're reading for, if you're reading for yourself, you're drinking the tea and you're putting your energy into the cup, and the leaves are going to fall according to that, around the teacup. So I feel like there's a deeper connection when somebody's drinking the tea compared to the tarot, because you're just shuffling the cards. Here you're actually, a part of the energy goes into you, and it's like a feedback loop, So yeah, so the other thing I love about it is sometimes people aren't open to being read with cards because they have these preconceived notions that it's evil but I find those people are usually okay with getting their tea leaves read. There's something, there's not that stigma with it.
Okay. That's interesting. Awesome. Totally just lost my train of thought because I'm like, I could just listen to you talk about this.
Well, I have to admit, I was like, what was your question? Did I just go off on a
No, yeah, just kind of what draws you to it and what makes you feel so connected to it.
Have you ever felt like so drawn to something you just know you have to do it? That's what it was like for me. I can't even explain it, but I just knew that I had to. I mean, I don't have a tea leaf reader in the family, where, somebody taught it to me. I just knew I had to do it.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. I love that. Our souls know what we should be doing.
They totally do, yeah.
So you have mentioned tarot a little bit. So what are some similarities to tarot, and then what are some differences to tarot? It sounds like there's a lot of differences to tarot.
Yeah, well, I would say with the similarities, you're still reading energy, right? And with the tarot, if you're an intuitive reader, you're going to take that symbol and let it trigger your intuition, and you're going to start channeling a message, right? So the process in many ways is very similar because you're still using all your clairs, your intuitive senses, right? Mm-hmm. And you still have to hold space for the person. It's just the medium is different. So with tea leaves, like for example, you look at the white space as well, and you look at what's in the tea leaves. Whereas like with the tarot, you're just focusing on the cards and of course what you're feeling, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess with both of them, you still have to have a great connection to the client. The process is the same, but the medium is so different.
Okay. And so you mentioned you don't necessarily need to know, with tarot, it does really help, like you said, to know about different archetypes and astrological things. And, but you don't necessarily need to know that with tea leaf reading?
Yes, the learning curve for tea leaf reading isn't as long, with the tarot, it's like a lifelong journey, right? Mm-hmm. With the tea leaf, sure, every so often, like, I'll read up something or I'll try something. I'll go, oh, that's really cool. But it isn't like the tarot where it's like a constant like journey. Because, I've never heard anybody truly say like, I know the tarot inside out.
Yeah.
You just can't, right? With the tea leaves, it's different. Like it is what it is in your cup, right? And what you're getting. And it's not complex. So if somebody was looking to get into intuitive work, I would say do tea leaf reading first to open yourself up to understanding symbolism, how spirit communicates, and the language of people that have passed over, how it comes through. And then when you get to the tarot, your third eye chakra is already open, and you can go more into it, right? Or if you're struggling with the tarot, try something different if it's not tea leaves,
That's pretty cool. So wait, you mentioned like spirits from the other side coming through. So does that happen during tea leaf readings?
Yeah, it does. I remember my first one. I was reading tea leaves for this woman, and she came in, and I saw this image, and I just thought, this is just so odd. So it was a man, and then one of his legs was like a plumbing kind of pipe. I just said to her, I said, I'm going to tell you something. It just sounds so crazy, but there's a man in your teacup, and he's got like one leg that's like a plumbing pipe, and then there's like a water slide next to him. And she goes, oh my God, that's so-and-so. So they do come through, and they show you, what they've done in their lives, and you'll see their physical characteristics. Like when you do mediumship, you get that through your third eye, and some mediums actually physically see them, right? But most of the time it's in your third eye. But with the teacup, you see it there. And what I love about it is you can show the client, and they'll go, oh my God, that's his nose or her nose or whatever.
That's so cool. I had no idea that could happen with tea leaf reading. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you can even do past lives, and it's pretty cool once you get into it a bit deeper, hey?
Wow. So it is definitely just a lot more than like, oh, I see a cat. Like,
oh, yeah, I mean, and for some people, that's where they're going to start off is, okay, I see a cat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I've had my tea leaf students in person, I always encourage them to tell a story. Because, if you went to a reading and you paid somebody and they said, I see a cat, I see a butterfly, I see a spoon, you're going to go, okay, well, what does it mean? So people had to go further, and that means developing your clairs, right? Those spidey, intuitive senses. Yeah.
That's so neat. I love this. And I get, or maybe I should have asked this a few questions ago. What exactly is tea leaf reading? I'm just assuming everybody knows exactly what it is. What is tea leaf reading?
Yeah, so you got to have a teacup and hot water and tea leaves, and there's a ritual that I do. And then what you do is afterwards you peer into the cup, because the tea leaves get scattered according to the person's energy, right? So you can tell so much when you just first peer into the cup, and then you start looking at the symbols. And sometimes there's letters, or might be zodiac symbols. I remember one time I was reading in North Vancouver, and this one teacup, it said I, like it was an I, and then it was you, and then it was a heart. It was I love you. And this gentleman really needed to hear it, and he just like broke down in tears. So sometimes you get like it gets spelled out, so it's like right in your face, right?
It's literally spelled out for you.
Yeah. And at other times it's more about you connecting and seeing, and the client may not see it there, but they're resonating with the message. So it's really interesting. And sometimes I find after you deliver a message, more messages come through, the tea leaves fall and change. It's just so dynamic.
Oh, I love it. I love listening to you talk about this. I'm like, yeah, keep going, just keep talking. That's so great. This just came to mind. Can you do tea leaf reading for somebody like on video chat, like somebody who's with you, or is this something that needs to be done in person?
Yeah, you definitely can. I mean, I always did my tea leaf readings in person, and I just opened them up online, and it's been working out fabulous, right?
Okay.
I do the ritual on their behalf, and, I walk them through it. So we're, exchanging energy, and, I'm just the medium that's doing the ritual for them. And then afterwards, I peer in and they get their messages. And if you got a good camera, you can show them the cup and everything. And then, it's been exactly the same. And I find like online people are more at ease. And I feel like that's because they're in their home. They haven't had to drive to a shop or to your home. So I'm starting to see some benefits in doing it online.
Yeah. That's so cool. And that opens it up too to so many more people, because I mean, as far as I guess I haven't actively searched tea leaf readers in my area, but as far as I know, I don't ever recall I see things for tarot readers all the time and just general psychics and mediums, but I don't think that there's any tea leaf readers actively reading in my area. So that's awesome that you can do it.
Yeah.
That opens it up for so many more people.
Oh, you're totally right about that. I mean, when I first learned it, I think there was like maybe one or two ladies that was doing it in the Vancouver area. And then I taught a few other readers, and I was hosting psychic fairs, and they would offer them, right? Along with either with their mediumship or their channeling, or actually one of them did it with Reiki. So it was really interesting. Like, you can combine it, and yeah, I guess my goal with the course that I'm offering now is to get more people out there, because you're right, there are not enough readers out there.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why do you think like tarot reading is obviously like super popular?
Yeah.
You know, but there's all these other different types of divination and spiritual connection. Why do you think that tea leaf reading has maybe stayed a little more on the outskirts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's definitely something that's reviving right now, but it's kind of like, oh, yeah, I'm just trying to get my thoughts here together. I feel like it's to do with just the culture that we're in, right? Like, I think back in the day, in the early 20th century and even earlier, people had time to come over for tea, right? And now you don't see that as much, right? And coffee's risen in popularity as well. And I guess it was something that just didn't get passed down, as much. And maybe people lost interest in a certain generation. But I'm finding in my generation, people want to learn how to do it because they just think it's cool. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I think. I think it's just due to the popularity of coffee, and then the tea bag got introduced in the early 20th century, so people weren't looking into their teacup because all the leaves were gathered in that pretty little tea bag, right?
Yeah. So, okay, I have like a few questions popping through my mind. So I don't know if you know this at all, then do you know if in countries where tea is more prevalent, like is tea leaf reading more common there than like in North America, I wonder?
Well, that's really interesting, because a lot of people think that tea leaf reading is very Eurocentric, right? And tea wasn't introduced into Europe until when the Dutch started bringing it over. So, but one of the things I learned was one of my students, she was of Chinese ancestry, and she said it's very common for her family and friends to peer into their teacup. So, yeah, that was really interesting. So, and then, with the Middle East, people have always looked into the coffee cup, right, after they drink it. And the Greeks read wine sediments. So I think, in a lot of ways, different cultures have read, cups of some form or another. It just might have not been tea.
That's so cool to me how all of these cultures have something so similar. Like that to me makes me think that there's definitely something to that then. If all of these different people all around the world are all doing kind of something similar, like there's something to it. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So I wish I would have wrote down my other question, because now I can't think of what in the world I was going to ask you. So what are the benefits to tea leaf reading? Like, why would somebody want to, you kind of touched on this a little bit.
So it definitely eases people, like I find sometimes when you're reading for people, they're nervous, they're anxious, and sometimes they're afraid of what they're going to hear, right? And just holding that warm cup of tea just really eases their energy. And also, like, it's a great complement to tarot, like I was saying, and even healing modalities like Reiki, right? You can definitely incorporate it in. And, you know, it's like a bonus. So you do your general reading, right? If you're doing tarot as your main thing. And it's like a bonus, right? And people love to like peer into their cup and take pictures of it and then post it and share it. And like you said, like not a lot of people have had a tea leaf reading. So it's something that's very unique, you know, in the
Yeah.
divination and intuitive world.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
did you find yourself that it kind of deepened your spiritual connection when you started to learn tea leaf reading and when you started to incorporate that into your own practice? Did it kind of, how did
Yeah.
it change your practice for you?
Yeah, like I was saying, it really opened me up to mediumship because with the, like, you know, when I was young, I always kind of felt spirits and saw them in a blue moon. But when I started to do the tea leaves, I started to get a stronger connection to loved ones that had passed over, right? Because they started appearing in the teacups. And then when I did the tarot, I started to do that more and more, you know, like the mediumship would come through even if I didn't do the tea leaves, but the tea leaves is what opened me up to it. It just cracked me open. And also I feel like it deepened my connection to spirit because I do read my own teacup when I'm feeling lost because, you know, I love to do the tarot too, but the tea leaves are so different. Until you experience it, it's really hard to describe what it's like. And yeah, Cherise, help me out. What was the question again? You just went on a little tangent.
That's why. And then every time you talk, I'm just like so enthralled with what you're saying. Like, yes. And then I forget my original question too. I think I had asked how it deepened your own spiritual connection.
Yeah. So I would
Either
say
way,
that,
whatever direction you were going in, it was good.
those are the ways. And also it opened me up to just learning about the different teas and their medicinal properties, right? And it got me into aromatherapy and interested in herbalism. So it's such a gateway to so many different things. And it's only possible if you're open to it, right?
Mm-hmm. I love that. So beautiful. So are there any misconceptions with tea leaf reading or just any sort of misconceptions or anything that people might be surprised about tea leaf reading?
Yeah, I had a fellow named Bill. He came to my tea leaf course twice, and he was really drawn to it, not because his grandmother or mother or aunt read them, but because his grandfather read them. And he educated me that on the fact that it wasn't just women that read tea leaves back in the day, because you think it's so associated with that, right? With the matriarch lineage, right? But no, men read tea leaves side by side. It was just very common to sit down and peer into the cup, and it wasn't anything that was taken seriously either. Mm-hmm. And I find that here's another difference. I find like people take the tarot really serious, whereas with the tea leaf, it's more of a curiosity kind of energy. It's not taken like, oh my God, is a death card going to show up or whatever. There's not that. Yeah, that energy with it. So that was one thing. He educated me that males did it. And the other one I mentioned earlier, that it's not as Eurocentric as most people believe it is. That, you know, people do read tea leaves in other countries, but it's just not a thing, you know. As far as I know, I could be totally wrong on that. So that's, you know, so those are the two big misconceptions, I would say.
Yeah. So you mentioned like the death card with tarot. Yeah. Do people ever freak out about that? Like, do people ever see like a skeleton in their teacup and they're like, oh my God, like what is this?
Yeah. You know, I've seen coffins and I've seen crosses. But as you know, like with the death card, it doesn't mean a physical death most of the time, right? So, you know, when I see it, because I don't, like many readers, I don't read death, right? Because I feel like I'm not spirit. Now, who am I to implant that in somebody's mind and then they go and create that, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, when I see it, it is, you know, an end of a cycle. There's a metamorphosis of something. There's a transition, right? So yeah, you do see those kind of symbols, but they're not as scary as the death card, you know, from the Rider-Waite, for example, with that skeleton figure on the horse. So
I know that is a pretty intimidating
Yeah.
image.
Yeah, it is.
So, okay, like I know with tarot reading, some people read like predictively, like this is going to happen. And then other people read more just here's kind of the current energies around you and how to work with them. So how do you personally do tea leaf reading? Is it more just kind of like here's a message that wants to come through for you, or is it more predictive? Can you do both?
Yeah, I would say I'm both. And, I usually tell whoever I'm reading for that the messages that are coming through, they're not written in stone, right? This is just right now, right here. And you can take the information and make changes. And then, if you don't want something to happen, then it won't, right? You're in control of your fate. And I think that's kind of interesting because sometimes when I read at the store, people would come to me and they'd be like, oh, I had a reading with so-and-so and everything they said, didn't come true. And I'm sure people have said that about me too, right? And then I would always educate them like, hey, like, the information you received, you made changes, right? You shifted your energy or you took actions, and that's why it didn't manifest. So, yeah.
Awesome. So I want to ask more questions, but I know you have your course, so I don't want to go like too many questions because we want people to take your course, which I'm signing up for. But just really quick, I guess, do different teas and herbs and stuff that you use, do those make a difference with your reading? Or like, what sort of, if somebody like gets off this call right now and they're like, I want to try right now to read my tea leaves, like,
yeah, they definitely do. Using like a tea bag versus loose leaf, you're going to get a different energetic impression in the teacup, just, because it does affect the way the tea leaves get scattered, right? And how much you add into the cup will influence it as well. Yeah, but certain teas, they create larger images and you want to use them for certain questions. And then certain herbs and teas have different magical properties. So I have a list of teas that I like to use for different questions. And yeah, and it's really useful because you're kind of adding that other layer, especially if you're into herbalism, right? Like it just makes it more potent because you're using what you know and then combining it with tea leaves, and then you're just creating magic, right? As you're reading.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then silly question. Are you putting just the tea, like the herbs, just right in the cup with the water? Or are you using one of the
teapot?
Apparently I'm well versed in my tea, and I love tea, but I don't know the little ball, tea ball.
Yeah. So in my workshop, I teach both methods with the teapot and with just doing the ritual with the teas and no teapot. So you want it to be accessible because you're not always going to have a teapot handy, right? And you may not want to use one, right? So there's a special teapot. You got to look for a feature with it. And same with teacups. You need to get specific ones for tea leaf reading because it's kind of like the tool. It's like kind of like the tarot, right? If you don't have a deck that doesn't speak to you, your readings aren't going to be as deep and as empowering and insightful, right? So you have to set yourself up for success with tea leaf reading as well.
Yay, this is also exciting. All right, I guess before we close out, do you want to kind of tell people about your course and like what it entails?
Yeah, sure. So for newsletter subscribers, I've already opened it up, and on October 1st, I'll be opening it up to everyone. So you can check out my social media for that or sign up for my newsletter. And the course is going to run from October 8th until the 31st. So it's just a little over 3 weeks. And there'll be 3 live sessions, and there'll be pre-recorded videos with, tons of information. So you can do it at your own pace, and there's lifetime access. And there'll be a Facebook group, which I'm going to keep open. I'm not going to shut it down after the course is over. So you can always go in there and ask questions and connect with other people, and you're going to get tons of practice in the group. And you don't have to have Facebook to join the course, but I highly recommend it.
Yay, I love it. Love it, love it. So what are some other ways that people can work with you? You have your shop, and then are you open for readings?
Yeah, I am. So I'm doing tea and card readings, and you can send me a message through email or on social media, and I can give you more info. And they've just been amazing because I always send a picture afterwards, and I say, like, you can look into your teacup, and if something pops up, that's a message for you, right? So it's a pretty cool medium. I'm just excited to finally offer it.
Yay, I'm so happy you are.
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. Well, is there anything before we close out that you want to add in on tea leaf reading, or just anything in general that you feel you need to share or mention?
Yeah, if you're curious about it and you want something to complement your existing services, or you just want to do it for yourself, if you're like an artist and writer and want to find creative inspiration every day, I would highly recommending learning this modality, because it's just so amazing for artists. Because I had one lady that would just look into her teacup, and then she would go and paint based on what she was saying. Or it can help with storylines, because you're going to see stuff that you wouldn't think of, right? And it can create interesting stories. But I don't know if this is true, but I heard Stephen King uses the tarot to help him write.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's just a rumor, but
that would be pretty awesome. He should incorporate tea leaf reading too, I think.
I think so too. You should take my course. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you should. You hear that? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me and enlightening us on tea leaf reading. I definitely learned some stuff, and now I'm even more excited for your course. And I also really want some tea right now. I keep looking over where I have my tea.
Oh, yeah.
What am I going to make?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, Cherise.
Thank you.
Pleasure to chat.
Seeds of Shati on Instagram and .com. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yes, you too.